Welcome to Corporate Warrior, the podcast that brings you the best advice on how to improve your health, optimize performance, and maximize productivity. With your host, Lawrence Neal.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Corporate Warrior with your host Lawrence Neal. On this show, I'm on a quest to learn from a wide range of experts to understand what are the most productive exercise routines, what are the best diets for burning fat and building muscle, and what are the productivity secrets to performing the best in our career, business, and lifestyle. My interview style was fostered by my own burning curiosity. I try and ask the questions that you're thinking about. I ask the questions that come out of interviews I've heard people on before or books that they've written. I want to understand more. I want to probe. I want to find the truth and separate the wheat from the chaff. I challenge my guests to fast track my learning and your own. Corporate Warrior is the #1 podcast for high-intensity strength training, a form of resistance training made popular by the late Arthur Jones in the 1970s and 80s. So we talk a lot about high-intensity training, funnily enough, and we talk a lot about building a business in this field as well. Guests include Body by Science authors Dr. Doug McGuff and John Little, exercise scientists like Dr. James Steele and James Fisher, big-time health and fitness gurus like Ben Greenfield and Steve Maxwell, productivity experts, entrepreneurs, extreme adventure racers, and many more. I'd like to kick this one off by thanking all of you that completed my survey recently. The feedback was very, very useful and in some cases very flattering, so I appreciate that. I have no guests this week, so I want to try a little experiment. I decided I'd record a shorter podcast of just myself to address some of your most common challenges. So what I'm going to run through are, a few things that came up frequently for you guys in the survey. And I'm just going to give you my own view based on what I've learned from interviewing over 40 people on, the subject of health, fitness, and productivity, and from my own reading and experience. So here we go. So number one, was fat loss. So a number of you mentioned you had difficulty sticking to diets, not overeating, avoiding junk food, and I assume ultimately losing body fat. And I completely appreciate the challenge therein, as we're hardwired for a time when food was scarce, and yet today access to food is ubiquitous and it's possible to consume thousands of calories in only a few minutes of a short trip to a restaurant or shop. So it's a toughie, and I think I've got some good insight on this one. So for me personally, I've managed, for the last few years to kind of hover around and retain my body fat to around 10%. So I don't really ever go over kind of 12, 13%, and I stick around the kind of 10, 11% mark most of the year. And there's a number of things which I think have helped contributed to that end. And I will caveat all of this by saying that I do fall toward the ectomorphic spectrum, so I do find it easier to remain lean than I suppose someone more toward the endomorphic side of things. So the number one thing that I would say has contributed to this, and if you were going to do a kind of a Pareto analysis, you would find that this is probably responsible for 80+% of the results, and that is diet. And the diet that's worked best for me is Tim Ferriss's slow carb diet, which is basically low GI foods, low glycemic index foods, 6 days a week. So that's kind of your meat, fish, eggs, vegetables, legumes, and healthy fats. And then one day a week you have a cheat day. So on your cheat day you can eat, drink, whatever you like, and as much of whatever you like, and probably best to schedule this day on a day when you're likely to be socializing. So I found this diet to be very effective, mainly because I find it very easy to comply with for a long period of time, which I think is the number one issue why most diets don't work, is that they're unsustainable. So that's why this diet has worked for me. I have tried other diets that have worked equally as well, if not better, such as I sort of played around with Dave Asprey's Bulletproof diet, and sort of moved more towards high fat, low carb. But I'm an outlier in a way, in that I don't necessarily struggle to remain disciplined. And I think for the masses, trying those types of diets might be a little bit too ambitious at the beginning. So slow carb diet is what I would recommend. And to make it even more effective and easy to sustain, there's a couple of other things as well. So I think accountability from a friend or partner or family member is a very strong motivator. So I'm quite fortunate that my girlfriend also does a slow carb diet. She's a vegetarian as well, so she's even got a bigger disadvantage. So when I can't stick to the carnivorous version of the slow carb diet, then I feel really bad because she's got it even harder. So if she can do it, I can do it. So that's a pretty powerful motivator, because you feel pretty guilty if you let the other person down by not sticking to the diet. So, and that doesn't have to be a girlfriend. It could just be your best friend. It could be someone in your family, whoever. The other thing that is very effective is if you start a podcast. So obviously on this podcast, I kind of have to, interview people on how to be really productive in all sorts of areas. And so I have to kind of practice what I preach. If I didn't, and if I was a fat, lazy slob, I would be quite hypocritical. So that does kind of motivate me to kind of meet those expectations. You don't have to start a podcast. Obviously, that's worked for me, but you could start a blog. You could start a completely different medium. Just some way that you can publicly document your commitment and also your progress. So that could even be just literally a Facebook post every day or every week, depending on how much you want to annoy your friends, or any other platform. So that type of thing is very powerful. It's a very powerful motivator. A couple of things that I think do contribute to remaining lean, but also holding onto muscle mass, are high intensity strength training. So I perform high intensity training once per week. I tend to do it in the evening, and I work out from home. I have a chin-up bar at home. I have an overhead. I have a barbell. I have push-up handles. I have a TRX. So I have a few things that make that possible. And what I tend to do is, 5 to 8 movements. During my training session, I do single set to failure. My workouts tend to last between 15 and 25 minutes. And they're bloody hard, but worthwhile, and I enjoy it very much. So I do that once a week. I find that if I do it more than once a week, with the way my lifestyle is at the moment, I don't seem to recover that well in between sessions. So once a week works for me, but you may be able to increase the frequency. So I do that, and then I also play basketball once a week. So I do that for recreation. It's not necessarily sort of for the physical conditioning side of things, but as you know, basketball is a fairly intense sport, so it probably does have a similar effect on the body. So I do that once a week as well. And I think whilst we all know that burning calories through doing exercise is a bit of a fool's errand. It's been shown that you don't actually burn that many calories, and that really, if you're following kind of a calories in, calories out paradigm, you're much better off just reducing your food intake. But that being said, I do buy into Doug McGuff's notion, which was, I think, explored in my second or third interview with him. And he talks about the reduction in the marginal utility of body fat the more you move. So you're basically sending a signal to your body to say, you know what, this stored body fat isn't useful. I'm moving a lot. It's only burdening me. So I do think that plenty of movement and things like high intensity training, which help retain and grow muscle, and basketball help to emphasize that signal and that mechanism. So that's a neat segue into the movement side of things. So I do try and move as much as possible. Like many of you, I'm sat at a desk in my career, which is currently in a technology sales environment. So, I am sort of sitting at a desk at a laptop. And obviously when I'm working on the podcast, I do actually have a standing desk, but a lot of it is done sitting as well. So I am very aware of that, so I try and build in movement where I can. So what that looks like is I will always try and take phone calls walking. So I've got a hands-free thing that I plug into my phone, and I'll always try and go for a walk when having a phone call. And other things like, if I've got to be somewhere and it's less than a 30-minute walk away, I'll always walk by default, unless I'm running late. And Another thing is if I'm getting the London tube to the office, I'll try and stand on the tube rather than sit down, even if there's seats everywhere, just to vary my body position, and try not to sit down all day long. So those are things I try and do to increase the movement in my day. So that's it really. So slow carb diet. High intensity strength training once a week, basketball once a week, and plenty of movement. Pretty simple, really. I think most of the people that listen to this podcast have kind of come to the realization that achieving good body composition isn't really that complicated, and the health and fitness industry makes it so, and makes lots of money in the process. Anyway, my next point. So another thing that was very popular for many of you was, and this won't come as any surprise, maximising muscle mass. So obviously it's a big topic of the podcast. And here are my views on that. So I do think, number one, is that genetics play a huge role when it comes to building muscle. I think a lot of people are disillusioned and think they can build these massive physiques. And I just don't think that is possible for the majority. I think if you do pursue an overfeeding type protocol, where you're stuffing your face with 6,000 calories a day, you will build some muscle for sure, but you'll also gain a lot of fat, and you'll just look a bit soft, and you'll also feel like crap, especially if your body type really isn't predisposed to hold a lot of weight. That's certainly been, in my experience of many others. So in terms of, but there are things that we can do to obviously optimize muscle gain. And I think that, again, it's not massively complicated. I think if you're doing, for efficiency, I would always advocate a high intensity strength training type protocol where you're working out once or twice per week, and you're doing two big vertical pushing movements and horizontal pushing movements, and the same for pulling. So I should say, one overhead pushing, one overhead pulling, one horizontal pushing and one horizontal pulling, and a big movement for your lower body, be it a squat or leg press. You're pretty much, and if you're doing that to muscular failure, single set, again, once or twice a week, you're pretty much going to get 80 to 90% of the best results in terms of stimulating your body to build more muscle. That's certainly what I've experienced. It's certainly what I think is true for many of the people I've had on the podcast. But that view may change, but that is kind of where I am at the moment. And in terms of the diet to support, one's goals to build more muscle, my last interview with Doug explored this somewhat, and his view was that if you work out what your sort of basal metabolic rate is, and what calories you burn just at rest, if you increase that by a few hundred each day, then that's all that's probably required to actually provide the body with enough substrate to build more muscle. And again, you probably have to play around with this, and it does probably vary for the individual, but consuming an excess of calories every day, I just think it's not going to be that effective, and it's probably not that healthy in the long term either. So that's what I would say for diet and training. I would also optimize all of this by making sure that your food is the best quality you can afford. So if you can get grass-fed meat, if you can try and get organic where possible, that's helpful. I think it's important to focus on improving the quality of your sleep. In fact, Dave Asprey has a really good blog article about hacking your sleep, and he talks about, the importance of blacking out your room, making it as pitch dark as possible, ideally not waking up to an alarm clock, not eating a few hours before bed, using things like earplugs. These are helpful interventions that you can use to improve your sleep quality. Others include also making sure you're well hydrated, drinking plenty of filtered water, and also reducing your stress levels. So I think we all get angry, we all get stressed out in life. I personally have found meditation to be very useful. I'm not one to meditate every day because I just don't have the self-discipline. But when I have meditated, I have found myself to be a calmer individual and not get so agitated by people in general. So I think stuff like meditation can help you realize that a lot of the things we get stressed out about really don't warrant the stress. And so, I think focusing on reducing your stress can help you build a better physique. And I will summarize by saying this, and this is something that Dr. Doug McGuff said to me, which I thought was very profound, and I think he said it a number of times since, is that in order to become a superhuman, you must remember that you are only human. So as soon as you start breaking the rules and trying to go to the gym every day and train every day, you're risking overtraining. You're digging into your body's energy reserves, and you're not going to recover and improve yourself. You have to abide to the laws of biology and make sure your body is getting what it needs and treating it in the right way to then enable it to produce the results. The last point, which was quite a common challenge for some of you, was sort of veering away from fat loss and building muscle now. And that was to become more productive and effective, which is a very interesting topic to me. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to this type of stuff. And I will start with this when it comes to being more productive. And that is, in fact, before I kick off, I will just say, what I've noticed is that this questions that's similar to this, is how do I spend more time with my kids? How do I find time for other interests in my life? That kind of thing, which I think comes down to productivity and effectiveness. Because if you can be more effective and increase your per hour output in your business or job, it's going to transfer into having more time for those things. So here we go. So I think the number one thing to do before you actually even look at the minutiae is to establish your goals. Figure out what it is that you really want to achieve. I think Tim Ferriss has got some excellent resources for this. If you read the 4-Hour Workweek, he's got a technique called dreamlining, where you can identify what it is you want to have, be, and do. And then you can basically then take a David Allen Getting Things Done, his book, approach, which is where you can define the next action for each one of those goals. So rather than saying, I want to build a business that makes, £10,000 a month. If you look at that as a goal, it's incredibly intimidating. So how the hell do I get there? But by putting just, that goal dash next action next to it, it breaks it down into bite-sized chunks, which enables you to be far more motivated to pursue it. So you can do that for each one of your goals. And that's a great way to start, to really break things down into what are the most, what is it I'm trying to achieve, and then what are the most effective steps to getting there. And this takes me on to my next point, which is the key to being productive is not being efficient, it's being effective. It's not doing things well, it's picking the right things. Now, none of what I'm saying is my own idea. I was introduced by Tim Ferriss, and I've since read things like The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. It talks a bit about this. So what it basically means is, efficiency is meaningless if it's spent on things that aren't important. So, for example, it's pointless being efficient at responding to email all day long if responding to email isn't getting you closer to your goal. Unless, obviously, you have to go into your email to pursue one of your goals. But you get where I'm coming from. So how I implement this in my own life is sort of what's to follow. So I use Outlook. So if you just take my technology sales job for a moment, I use Outlook as my to-do list. So each day I will see my Outlook day, and I'll have a few items on that need to be done or that need to be done by some point. And what I would do is I'll review each item and I will gauge the level of importance for each one. And I will then usually pick 2, and I will block out my morning from 9 till normally around 12 to just focus on those items. And I will try and, where possible, block out all distractions and just focus on getting those things done. I will also batch email, so I normally set an hour before lunch and an hour around normally 4 to 5 p.m. to batch process email offline. So what that means is I'll try and get through a ton of email, and that's all I would do in that period. And when I hit the offline button and come online again, all of my email will send at once. So I'm not, sending an email, getting an email straight back, that type of thing. So I'm trying to not treat email like instant messenger, which I think a lot of people do, and they get very distracted as a result. So that's what I try and do there. So another thing that's been really effective for me is really embracing automation, so using software to automate certain manual tasks, and also outsourcing. So because obviously I have this full-time, pretty demanding role in technology sales, it's quite difficult for me to really sometimes put the effort into this podcast as I'd like to. So I've had to really figure out how to outsource certain things and use certain software. So for example, this audio that you're listening to, it's not always the best quality. I do try and improve each time, but that's not down to the fault of my friend who helps me edit the audio, but probably down to my equipment. But anyway, I digress. So what I do is I outsource the editing of the podcast itself. So once I've recorded it, I'll send the files to him, and he will stitch all the different bits together, the sponsor, the intro, etc., and just make sure it sounds the best it can. And once he's finished, it then goes over to another freelancer that I use who will actually write the entire blog post. So I've got these predefined checklists. If you haven't read Checklist Manifesto, it's a must-read in terms of actually building checklists for repetitive tasks in your life. So I will send this checklist to my other freelancer, and he will write out this blog post and include all of the different links for the different products. So he will do that for me, and for a reasonable cost. And what that enables me to do is focus on perhaps being more strategic or finding guests or researching or whatever. So I found that to be incredibly useful. So outsourcing repetitive tasks where possible, I do think is a great investment. My other thing, as I was saying, was embracing automation in terms of software. So, for example, I've always been a bit crap at social media, and recently I've started using Buffer, which is a piece of software where you can schedule posts. So whenever I read an article I find interesting, I can submit the article into my Facebook page or Twitter schedule, which is linked to a schedule I've predefined. So if it's once a day, I can put 10 posts in there, but it will only post one post per day. So I try and mix that up with a variation of legacy podcasts I've interviewed in the past and legacy blog posts, and also new content I find that I think is very high quality. So I'll put it into Buffer, and then Buffer will sort of drip feed out into the various social media platforms I'm on. So rather than me having to actually manually go into, my Facebook page every day and think of something to post. Another really good piece of software is Schedule Once, which is amazing and it's a huge lifesaver. And basically, it integrates with my iCal calendar. So I can block out and schedule once all of the time that I am available for podcasting and not available. And then what I do is I send that link to a prospective guest, and then they can click the link and they can select a time that works for them, and it will sync the time zones. So I don't have to worry about, this time GMT, what is that, your time CST, and all of that stuff, which confuses the hell out of me. And more than once I've been either late or early to a podcast, so I try and avoid that where possible. So Schedule Once has been a huge lifesaver. It does cost a small fee every month, but I do think it is worthwhile. The last thing I will mention is a very simple add-on called Boomerang, which I believe does plug into Outlook and Gmail. I prefer it in Gmail. And basically, what it enables me to do is to send an email, and I can select it so that if I don't hear back, I will get a reminder within a set time frame. So if it's a really urgent, important email, I can set it to perhaps remind me this afternoon or in one day's time. Or if it's not that important to me, but I would like to track it and follow up, I can set it to remind me to send it back to me in 4 weeks, so that I don't lose track of that particular item. So Boomerang is, again, another lifesaver. It takes a load off the brain and enables you to automate some of these things that can be quite important. So those are some tools, those are some habits, rituals, and software, and I guess techniques that I still use to be as productive and as effective as I can. So I hope that was really useful. If you enjoyed this one, do let me know and I will do more. Please subscribe to Corporate Warrior on iTunes, as that would really help support this podcast, but also it will mean that you will automate your consumption of Corporate Warrior. You won't have to go and download it each time. So for all of the show notes and links, please head over to 15minutecorporatewarrior.com/podcast. And you will be able to find all of the links mentioned in this one and a list of all the other podcasts I've done before. That will work for you, hopefully, as well. So thanks again for listening. All the best, and I will talk to you soon. Cheers. This episode is brought to you by hituni.com. If you haven't been a long-time listener and had the upsides of high-intensity training drilled into your brain, HIT has dramatically reduced my exercise volume to sub 30 minutes per week, while helping me build more muscle and reduce my body fat to 10%, which in turn has enabled me to do more with my time, like play sports that I love, build businesses, and play more Call of Duty. Who wouldn't want that? So what has this got to do with Hit Uni? HitUni.com are providers of amazing online courses that teach you all about high-intensity training. There's a course for newbies that will show you how to optimize your workouts to build more muscle, burn more fat, and improve overall health. And the bulk of the courses are designed to qualify you to become a high-intensity training personal trainer and equip you with all the knowledge and business skills you need to build a successful fitness business. Hit Uni comes highly recommended by Body by Science author Dr. Doug McGuff, Discover Strength CEO Luke Carlson, Drew Bay, and Medex Precision Fitness owner Blair Wilson. It was founded by author and one of the UK's leading personal trainers, Simon Shawcross, who's been training people for 15 years and has supervised over 15,000 workouts. With help from contributors like Jimmy Moore, Dr. James Steele, and Edward Harrison, and inspiration from Arthur Jones, Dr. Ellington Darden, Ken Hutchins, Mike Mensa, Hit Uni is a goldmine for learning everything to do with high-intensity training. The courses are delivered online through the website, where you can learn via a variety of multimedia materials at your own pace. There's an online support and discussion forum where you can share ideas and ask for help. I personally used Hit Uni to build my own stunning physique, just kidding, but I have purchased a course to improve my understanding of HIT and improve my own results. The content is amazing, the courses are really easy to follow, and each section is organised into these bite-sized chunks that give you a real sense of achievement as you tick off each one. To get your exclusive Corporate Warrior 10% discount on any course you purchase, simply head on over to hituni.com, that's hituni.com, and enter the coupon code CW10. So again, head on over to hituni.com, choose your course, and enter the coupon code CW10. Thank you for your support.